Good evening, and welcome to this edition of Labor Vision. This evening's show is part of our Legislative Issues series hosted by Jim Parisi. I'm Bob Delaney, Executive Director of the Institute for Labor Studies and Research. Labor Vision, a production of the Institute, focuses on topics of importance to working Rhode Islanders. We hope you enjoy this evening's edition.
Thank you for joining us for this segment of Labor Vision, where we bring the General Assembly right into your living room. My name is James Parisi. I'm a field representative with the Rhode Island Federation of Teachers and Health Professionals, and I'm your host this evening. So today we're going to be talking about income taxes, or more specifically, tax equity, an effort to get a more fair income tax structure. And joining us, we are pleased to have Senator Juan Pichardo with us. Senator, thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Jim, for inviting me and having me.
Terrific. Senator Pichardo represents the 2nd District in Providence. He was first elected in 2002, so he spent just over a decade in the General Assembly. He is the Deputy Majority Leader. He chairs the Senate Committee on Housing and Municipal Government. He serves on the Finance Committee, which is particularly important for this issue. And he also serves on the Veterans Affairs Committee, which is important because you're retired from the National Guard. Right?
That's correct.
Okay.
22 years.
Yeah, 22 years. That's a good amount of time. And finally, for education background, you went to Providence Public Schools, Mount Pleasant High School, CCRI, and you're a graduate of Rhode Island College.
That's correct.
Okay.
That's correct.
Well, thank you for joining us.
Yeah.
And maybe before we start talking about legislation, why don't you just give us a little bit of background on yourself? How did you get involved in politics in the first place?
Yeah. Well, thank you. First of all, thank you for having me on your show. I know over the years I've surfing the channel, seen it, but this program is very important to Rhode Islanders as you cover a lot of the press conferences and the issues that are important to the working family. Mm-hmm. You know, for me, it began as a young person here in the South Side in the West End, making sure that not only are we, as a person, but also as a community, that my heritage was important through community involvement. And then it arose from getting involved on issues that really mattered. Sometimes when you drive around our community, and the public safety was an issue, whether it's affordable housing and how these issues were affecting our communities. And while attending the Community College of Rhode Island, and at the same time participating in the Rhode Island Air National Guard, your eyes open up more to the issues that are important to raising a family, going to school, affordable education for our community. And for me, I was seeing what the future was going to be. And for me, it has been about the future. When we look at Rhode Island's economy, when we look at the families and young people growing up in Rhode Island, it's about their future. It's about the right training that young people should have in order to get a good job, therefore paying taxes. And also raising a family in a safe environment in our community, while growing our economy locally, within our neighborhoods, within our cities, and within our state. Those were some of the reasons that I really got involved with in politics. Mm-hmm. And you know, I could tell you that also one organization that really had a great impact on me was the Ocean State Action. Marty Rosenberg was at that time involved, and we were trying to promote and also health care for all. And at that time, I was also working at Rhode Island Hospital, and really made out information that within my community, a lot of people were not insured, and a lot of Rhode Islanders. And through the work of Ocean State and organizations that are progressive, really have been fighting for over a decade to ensure that people have quality health care, quality education, and quality economic outcomes in the future.
Sure. Marty is a terrific leader and a terrific progressive leader in our state and a great organizer. So you would certainly learn from the best out there.
Yes.
Was the race for Rhode Island Senate your first shot at political office?
It was. I actually ran in 2000, and it was a lot of fun in the district, and I ran against an incumbent, at the end, it seemed that I won the popular vote, but then the mail ballots really did us in. You go to bed as a winner and then wake up next day, and to our surprise, it was about 91 mail ballots. But when you have a passion about your community, you have a passion about moving forward and doing the right thing. I came back in 2002, and that was a challenging time too. And so I got elected in 2002 and was sworn in 2003. So 2013, I have 10 years. This marks my 10th year anniversary of public service.
Sure. So other than the issue of tax equity, what are the other legislative issues that you're grappling with this year? What's your agenda?
Yeah, for me, it's been about the working families and the working class and making sure that the families and individuals have a bright outlook in the future and given those opportunities. For me, it's about ensuring that those people who are low skills, but the ability to, when given the opportunity to progress and to get an education, they're willing to work and set the example for their kids and their community. So for me, the in-state tuition is one issue that's important because it talks about young people that are attending our schools, and if they have the ability to attend a college, why not give them that opportunity to pay resident in-state tuition? It's just only fair, at least from my perspective. And I think that over the years, we've done some good work on that. And I hope that this year we get to pass, codify in law, as the Board of Governors instituted in 2011. And we've seen that it could work, and that young people, when they're given the opportunity to go to school, that they can do great stuff. When it comes to making sure that we have enough resources to repair the ability to own a home, affordable housing, really critical. When a family has a roof over their head, I think that settles some of their worries. And also healthcare. Thank goodness for the Act for Affordable Healthcare, as we call it, Obamacare. I think that's important for a lot of the families. It's important for Rhode Islanders. And for the first time, we're in the path of reducing, those, I believe it's about 125,000 people uninsured, that we're going to lower that to a very small percentage of people being covered. That's a gist of my theme or agendas moving forward, because at the end of the day, it's about us in Rhode Island. It's about the future. It's about making sure that we have a brighter future. And we're not doing this piece of legislation for me or for the current resident, but it's also about those who are really growing up and seeing how great Rhode Island can be.
Sure. So you've got quite an ambitious list of issues in front of you, and tax equity is just one piece of that puzzle.
Oh, yeah.
So last year, a coalition came together that worked on the issue of income taxes, and they pushed some legislation that would raise the income tax rate on the wealthy by 4%. The argument was there was about a 4% cut in income taxes on the rich when the state did the flat tax in 2006. This year's version is different. I think people felt that was probably too ambitious, and the proposal that you've sponsored this year raises the income taxes on the wealthy by 2 percentage points. And that cutoff point, the definition of wealthy, if you will, for tax equity purposes is people who earn $250,000 a year or more. Right. So this is interesting legislation. I know there's a broad-based coalition of people people who support it. Why don't you start by letting our viewers know why you have an interest in this kind of legislation, and with whatever money comes in, where do you think it ought to be spent?
Yeah. Well, you know, as I said earlier, I think that the viability of families and Rhode Island requires the right investment. And over the years in the previous administration, and even through our both General Assembly, we made certain cuts because of the economic downturn, but also the projections. And for me, during those times, I was also vocal during that time, but also challenging that it was going to be harder on our working families. And you know, that's where I think that the coalition of so many organizations came together, including labor, to ensure that the voice is strong. You know, 2% on those who are making over $250,000. When we say it, a lot of people may say, "Well, that's too much money," but the reality, it is not. We make the case that it is not. It's when you look at the numbers of Rhode Islanders making that kind of money or above, it's a small percentage. I believe it's about 1% of the total population. When you look at the money being that could potentially be generated, that is spread out through those who are being taxed, it's close to $67 million. And if we make the right investments, whether it's adult education, whether it's repairing our roads and infrastructure, we wouldn't have those toll or those discussion on the bridge in Portsmouth, down in that area. But really focusing on making Rhode Islanders and those who are working class a part of the growing economy. And when you look at the graphs that you're probably going to show and that you're going to highlight, you know, usually the lower income and the working class pay more taxes than those who are actually making a whole lot of money because of the tax credits, because of the other tax advantages that are afforded at the federal level, but also at the state level.
So I was a lobbyist back in 2006 when the state did the tax cut for the wealthy, the flat tax. And I heard the argument over and over again that if we cut taxes on the wealthy, it's going to spur job creation and economic activity. Myself and all the other proponents of tax equity believe that that's been a miserable failure, that giving the wealthy tax breaks does not create jobs. Instead, investing in education, investing in infrastructure, investing in the middle class is the best way to grow our economy. Have you seen any evidence that this past policy of cutting taxes on the wealthy is benefiting our state? You
know, I haven't seen any evidence of that that really has stand out. I think that we continue to find out and trial and error in terms of how do we spur growth. I think that you know, we've had a perfect storm of downturn economics that really, with policies and actions that we've taken to try to reduce the tax rate for the rich, and thinking that that will grow jobs. The reality, that hasn't happened. We see the effects of 38 studios. You know, I'm a firm believer that we need to focus more on the small businesses in the neighborhoods and look at you know, these industrial zones that were focusing on manufacturing. When I was growing up here and my mother was growing up, in fact, I used to work down here with Calibri. So we have to look at investing in adult education. When I look at the population in the district that I represent, the majority is a minority community. When you look at the unemployment rate, it's about 22% in the Hispanic community. You look at almost 18% in the African American community. These industrial zones served as an engine for jobs, an engine for providing the food on the plate, paying the rent, and the ability to purchase a home. And when that's taken away, we start seeing the other effect. People losing their homes, high unemployment, and young people losing hope and dropping out of school. And that's why I think for me, it is important to communicate to and support legislation such as you know, raising the taxes at least to those who are over 250,000, measly 2%. Because I think spreading it out, I think the total benefit in the long term will benefit all, including the rich.
Sure, you make a very good point, and you made reference to some charts. So there is some information that the Rhode Islanders for Tax Equity did put together, and we're going to show this to the viewers. There are 4 different charts. The first one maps out the unemployment rate, which is sky high now, compared to the income tax rate. And not only does this chart highlight when the flat tax was done, but it also mentions the prior tax breaks that were given in income taxes in the late 1990s. The second chart that we're showing our viewers shows the impact of a Rhode Island upper income personal income tax increase. This really shows how small a number there are of people affected by this proposal. Only 1.2% of all Rhode Islanders fall under this category. It's really a small number of people affected, but a great benefit to everyone, including the wealthy, if our economy is put on the right track. The third chart is a real interesting one, which shows that as a percent of income, poor people pay more taxes than rich people. 12% of the poorest 20% of Rhode Islanders pay that much in taxes, and it's under 9% for the top 1%, the people affected by this bill. And finally, a favorite of mine, because I care about tax policy. People complain about taxes all the time in Rhode Island, but it's really our property tax that's the problem. We have the 4th highest property tax in the country, but when you look at Rhode Island income tax and sales tax and corporate taxes, we're actually below average. So it's better on those taxes than it is property taxes. And that information just brings me to the next point I'd like to discuss is many people who support tax equity would love to see some of the money being used to help cities and towns. Maybe give some property tax relief or help local governments that really have been under a lot of duress in the last couple of years in Rhode Island.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. I think that, as a homeowner myself and in listening from my constituents, property tax are very onerous on families, very onerous on individuals, because that affects everyone. When you look at, once you get that bill, you start thinking about if you own a piece of property, how the rents continue to go up. And that's why Rhode Island, in order to have a 2-bedroom apartment, the average is close to $1,000. And so when you compare that on the income that a working individual or a family is earning, it's very difficult to sustain that. You look at the effect of homelessness in our state continues to increase because of these policies. I think those are, that chart where it shows that we're the 4th highest property tax rate. I think we have to, in the future, really start looking at addressing that issue, just as we're trying to address the tax equity issue, because if we don't have successful and providing opportunities for working individuals, who's going to pay the taxes? Who's going to actually rent the apartments? You're going to start seeing the other effect, which is higher homelessness in our community. And it's detrimental when you see, before people would think that homelessness only affected those individuals of mental illness. Now you start seeing, single moms with children. You start more so even veterans that come out of the recent war and the difficulty and the challenges that they see and that they're facing. Everyone needs that support, and I think that those who are working hard and are making over $250,000 really can get behind this. And at a certain point, just like we're doing this, perhaps we can come back and reduce it, just like as any other policies can be changed too.
I don't think people want to just raise taxes for the purpose of raising taxes. I think there really needs to be a focus on economic development. And to the credit of your Senate leadership, I know a lot of people over in that Senate are really honed in on trying to figure out something to improve our economy here in Rhode Island.
Yeah, you know, that you're right. You're correct on that. Senator Teresa Pivot-Weed, the president, and our leader, Dominic Ruggiero, have taken on early on in the year really focusing on the economic development. In fact, there was a focus both on the House and the Senate on the arts and we had a charade, they call it, and it was what was the focusing on the arts and using the arts as an economic tool to spur economic development. And so that was one, and that continues that conversation. But the other one is focusing on policies and action steps that can really help us move the needle. And that's how reports have come out in that package to move the needle on economic development, on policies that really impact individuals and people in preparing those for future careers. When you look at on education, when you look at those individuals who went on to a 4-year institution and for some reason or another only finished 3 years. And now we just passed in the Senate, and I'm sure in the House is going to be passed, the reverse credits, where it will allow a student to obtain those credits and obtain an associate's degree. And so that's something that I think it will help our ratings, but also the individual really obtain a certificate, an associate's degree, and really motivate them to continue their education, therefore preparing the workforce that we need in the future.
Sure. I think there's a lot of different ways that resources could be reallocated to make the economy better, and we appreciate your support of tax equity as a key ingredient of that. Senator, thank you very much for your time. Unfortunately, we're out of time right now, but I appreciate your sponsorship, and I appreciate your time where you're letting our viewers know what's going on with income tax policy. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much for having me. I look forward to coming back.
Hi, my name is Elizabeth Larkin, and I am president of the Cranston Teachers Alliance. And I am here to have a grievance heard. Lately, what's going on in Cranston is something that's really unbelievable. We have had 35 years of labor management peace. Over the last 25 years, we've worked together on many, many initiatives, academic initiatives, reading groups and things like that, teacher evaluation, programs, math programs, reading programs, literacy, teacher assistance, all different things. We developed all different initiatives together. We have resolved some really difficult contract language over the years, and in 2011, we were working under a contract when the school committee came to us with some really, really tough financial needs. And the Cranston Teachers Alliance stepped up to the plate. We opened up our contract and renegotiated, pushing it out 2 years with no raises and giving back $5.1 million. And at this time, we also addressed a few other issues that we did not have to address. Over the last few months, since Commissioner Gist sent out her letter of January 31st, stating that school committees and superintendents would lose public funding and/or superintendents would lose their certification if we were allowed by contract to have any kind of a job fair. In Cranston, that is called a jamboree. We are under contract. We have our contract until August 31st, and they have given every indication to us that they are not going to honor our contract, that they're going to abrogate it and disallow us to have by right what is ours. This is not a way that you have collaboration. They have sent the wrong message. They are destroying long-term relationships that have taken decades to build. Commissioner Gist's letter is threatening. She is a bully. She is threatening to withhold funds from children as Commissioner of Public Education in Rhode Island. She is threatening certifications of hardworking superintendents. She's threatening teachers, and she is forcing people to be so afraid and be bullied that they would be willing to break a contract. Nothing comes good of it. Nothing comes good of it at all. You have to honor a contract, and it keeps the relations, and then you negotiate.
Thank you for joining us for this edition of Labor Vision. We appreciate your input and encourage your comments. Labor Vision can be seen 3 times each week: Tuesdays at 7 p.m., Thursdays at 8 p.m., and Saturdays at 5 p.m. Good evening, and welcome to this edition of Labor Vision. This evening's show is part of our Legislative Issues series, hosted by Jim Parisi. I'm Bob Delaney, Executive Director of the Institute for Labor Studies and Research. Labor Vision, a production of the Institute, focuses on topics of importance to working Rhode Islanders. We hope you enjoy this evening's edition.
Thank you for joining us for this segment of Labor Vision, where we bring the General Assembly into your living room. My name is James Parisi. I'm a field representative with the Rhode Island Federation of Teachers and Health Professionals, and I'm your host this evening. Today we're going to be talking about teacher evaluation and specifically some legislation surrounding teacher evaluation. We're pleased to have 2 guests with us. Representative Bill O'Brien was just elected this past fall. He represents the 54th District of North Providence, and he is a math teacher at Hope High School, and he is a proud member of the Providence Teachers Union. Bill serves on the HEW committee as well as the Committee for Environment and Natural Resources. Bill, thank you for joining us today.
Glad to be here.
Great. Also joining us is Frank Flynn. Frank is president of the Rhode Island Federation of Teachers and Health Professionals. He had about 35 years of teaching experience in the city of Cranston, where he was president of the Cranston Teacher Alliance. And Frank has been president of the State Federation of the AFT here in Rhode Island since 2010. Frank, thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.
All right. Bill, let's start with how you got involved in politics. What motivated you to run for General Assembly?
Actually, the economy was awful in North Providence. Foreclosures, we had over 166 foreclosures that year in my town, and I said, I'm going to run. And I just started walking, and I kept walking, and I kept walking, and I just happened to win. So that's the main thing. It's all about the people of North Providence for me, and I want to make their lives a little bit better. And that's what I try and do every day.
So this was your first run at office,
It's
correct?
the second run. I lost to Greg the first time.
Greg Shadone.
Greg Shadone. And then I won this election.
Mm-hmm. But you had never held any other office or run for anything else?
Nope, I was just town committee.
Okay.
Democratic town committee.
Yeah. And talk about your teaching for a moment. What got you involved in public school teaching?
Well, I always wanted to be in the Peace Corps. So when after I was working for Benny's for a couple of years, I said, I want to teach. I decided to teach because I want to help children. And I decided to go in the Peace Corps for 2 years to get the experience I needed. And they put me in South Africa, and I fell in love with it. I fell in love with every aspect of teaching, how you shape the young minds and you make them better people. And when I came back, I went to grad school in Miami. I got my enough credits to get my teaching certificate in Rhode Island, and I came back and I applied at Hope High School, where I am now, and I was hired like 2 days after I came back in Rhode Island because I had a math degree.
And you've stayed close to home. You're a graduate of North Providence High and Rhode Island College, aren't you?
Yes, I am. I was also captain of the football team at North Providence, and I've lived in North Providence basically all my life except for Peace Corps and grad school.
Okay. And other than this issue of teacher evaluation, what other legislative issues are you working on this session?
Well, the governor has a couple of cuts in nursing homes, so my top priority right now is to restore that $12 million cut. And I've been working with the governor's office to try and get that put back in.
Okay, that's a terrific project, and,
yes, it is.
And our SEIU members certainly appreciate your advocacy on that issue. Frank, who does the AFT represent in Rhode Island?
We have approximately 9,000 members. Most of our locals are K-12. We have about 6,000 K-12 teachers. We represent the college professors at both Bryant College and Rhode Island College. We represent the professional staff at Rhode Island College as well as the adjunct professors. We represent the court reporters. We have our local at the Rhode Island Department of Ed. We represent 2 locals of visiting nurses. We represent the Rhode Island Substance Abuse Counselors. And I hope I'm not forgetting anyone, but we have a very vibrant retiree local chapter as well.
Sure. And other than this issue of teacher evaluation, what are the legislative priorities of the Rhode Island Federation of Teachers this session?
Our priorities this year, one is responsible contract resolution, which we've been working on for several years. We're also very interested in accelerating the funding formula for schools, making sure that it's funded and accelerating it if possible. And also something that's also very important to us would be the restoration of some of the funds that were cut to the developmentally disabled community 2 years ago. They began restoring them last year with an additional $9 million, a little over $9 million, and of the 24 that had originally been cut, and we'd like to see them move further along in that process, particularly to make sure that the money gets down to the providers.
Terrific. So this is the first year that we've seen legislation directed specifically at teacher evaluation. Representative, you put in a bill that would say that student achievement shall count for no more than 1/3 of a teacher's overall rating. So tell us about the bill and tell us why you put it in.
Well, the teacher evaluation bill that's, evaluation that's come out from Rhode has caused, is really putting inner city teachers at a disadvantage. And some principals are counted almost 70%. And if you have test scores like we have in Hope High School, for example, we have excellent teachers, but we're losing them because they don't want their job to be in jeopardy. So they're leaving the city of Providence. Math teachers have moved, the young math teachers have moved out of our district because of that 70%. And we lost 2 at Hope High School this year. They both went to classical, where obviously the test scores are going to be more favorable to a teacher. And so this is an attempt to just bring it a little bit more in line in fair for all teachers in the state of Rhode Island.
Have you heard from a lot of your colleagues about the legislation and the issue of teacher evaluation?
Yes, I have. I mean, we have 2 teachers out on maternity leave right now. They don't know there's no regs from Rhode to deal with teachers who are on maternity leave. So what are they going to give them, a bad evaluation? I mean, this is the things, it's 4 years now we've been going through this, and we do not have regulations in place for every situation. We got teachers out on long-term disability. What's going to happen with them? There's no regs. The commissioner has not come up with any regs to deal with those 2 situations. And she's been in place for 4 years now.
I sense a certain frustration from you. You probably hear that same frustration from your coworkers, don't you?
Absolutely, absolutely. They're doing the best they can with the resources they have, and they get kicked in the teeth every single day.
Sure. Frank, before we talk about the legislation, could you describe to our viewers what involvement your union has had with the issue of teacher evaluation generally?
Sure. Ironically, when Hope High School was going through their reorganization under No Child Left Behind, which was over 4 years ago, and we had our previous commissioner, Mick Walters, was in place, we realized that a lot of the conditions of employment that were a result of the policies of No Child Left Behind were going to be based upon teacher evaluations, and we didn't have a standardized or even an efficient teacher evaluation in place in many schools or many school districts. So we knew that it was important for us to get involved in that early on. Since then, we've been involved, our organization, in a labor management consortium with 6 of our districts. And we've been working very closely with the superintendents and the administrations and the teachers' unions in those districts to make sure that we have a Rhode-approved model, which we did. We brought 2 federal grants, 2 grants in, an AFT innovation grant and an I3 grant from the U.S. Department of Ed to facilitate the implementation and the design and implementation of those grants. We've done a tremendous amount of work in developing them. We have one of 2. The other is another AFT local, Coventry, that have Rhode-approved models other than the actual Rhode model. And that's on the professional practice piece of the evaluation.
Could you describe to our viewers what that is compared to the student achievement portion of teacher evaluation?
Sure. The professional practice piece would involve the actual classroom observations, a teacher's questioning skills, a teacher's knowledge of their curriculum, the teacher's involvement in the school, they're dealing with parents and their professional development responsibilities, all of those professional responsibilities that aren't measured by student achievement tests or student measures.
Did the AFT consortium with the superintendents get involved in the student achievement portion, the measuring student achievement portion of teacher evaluations?
No, whatever model that you have developed, us or the Coventry models, we only were involved in the professional practice. The entire student learning component was developed and mandated by the Rhode Island Department of Ed.
Representative, why should the General Assembly get involved in this issue of teacher evaluation?
Well, what we need, the representatives should get involved because it's causing an absolute disaster in our inner cities. Look at the upheaval in Central Falls. Are you going to just shut down schools every single time? Hope High School is always going to be testing at the very bottom because of the situation they were put in. All our good students in the city of Providence go to classical. All the students that are left over get split up between all the other high schools. So when I have my freshmen in ninth grade algebra, when they sit before me in August, all of my kids, I know, without even looking at a transcript, they are 2 to 3 to 4 years behind in mathematics. And and we are evaluating that. And at the end, even if I do a fantastic job, I get them 2 years improvement. They go from 6th grade to 8th grade. I'm still measured as I failed. That's not failing. That's doing your job. If you improve a kid 2 years in 1 year, then you did a great job, and you should be commended for that. With the evaluation system that's in place right now, you are checked off as a failing teacher, and that's wrong.
So your bill has two components. One caps the amount that student achievement could have, whether it's a standardized test or any other measure of student achievement. And then the other portion says that all of these student achievement issues won't be implemented by the Board of Ed until they're deemed valid and reliable.
Correct.
Do you think the current system is valid and reliable?
No, it's absolutely not valid. As I just explained to you, you can improve a kid 2-3 years in over the high. Let's take the high school as a whole. We can improve it. We could get a child that's testing at 6th grade, testing at 5th grade math, 6th grade English. At the end of her 3 years, 2 years, freshman and sophomore year, she could be testing at 8th grade in both, which is an improvement 3 years in one and 2 years in another. And so she improved more than what she should have in 2 years, right? But the high school still gets a failing grade for that student. And that's not right. You have to test them when they come. If you want a valid system, you have to test them and find out where they are and when they come into the school, and then you test them 2 years and see how much improvement they have made. Not just give a blanket test and say, oh, they're 2 years behind, so you fail. So if you get a kid, and we get kids that don't even know a word of English. In 2 years, they're testing on a 5th and 6th grade. How is that not improvement? They come to us, they don't know one word of English. In 2 years, they're testing at 6th grade. How is that not doing your job? How is that English teacher a failing English teacher? And that's what's wrong with this teacher evaluation system that they have in place today.
And your legislation would fix it by putting the brakes on it.
Yep.
Okay. Frank, you were at the House Labor Committee when this bill was first heard. What did you tell the members of that committee on why Representative O'Brien's bill should pass?
Well, first of all, I think we need to reiterate today, and as I did when I testified, that we're not opposed to a fair, valid, and reliable evaluation system for all teachers. And that evaluation system needs to provide input that's reliable and useful for those teachers to identify their strengths and weaknesses and to improve their teaching skills. That's important if we're going to make progress with students. continue to make progress with students. And that's the first thing I testified against. The other thing we testified against is that this method, this system is unproven. And it's not, we don't believe it's valid or reliable. And until it is, then we need to put the brakes on and gather the data. We're not opposed to data gathering. It's important. We need to do that in order to prove its validity and reliability. But we're not doing that right now. The commissioner is actually gathering that data at the end of this school year, and it may be used to have consequences about employment decisions for teachers. And that's clearly wrong, because this is an experiment. If this were a pharmaceutical company and they were developing a drug, they wouldn't be testing it and marketing it while they were still developing it. And so it's ridiculous that they're moving too fast. We need to do it right and not just do it quickly to be in compliance with the timelines of a federal grant. And that's what's driving this right now. And that's really unfortunate, and it's wrong.
The federal grant being Race to the Top, which provided some money to develop this, but I don't think the intent of Race to the Top was to create bad systems that force people out of teaching, particularly in urban public school districts.
Right. And that's exactly what's happening. You see teachers, the young teachers, they come to Providence now for two, 3 years, and then they're finding up jobs elsewhere. We want to keep those teachers because they're good teachers. But hey, they say, hey, well, why am I going to put up with this? Every year, I'm being told that I'm a failing teacher. Everything coming from Rhode says I'm a failing teacher. You know, no one likes to be told that. We all like to be saying, hey, you're doing a pretty good job. I haven't heard I'm doing a pretty good job in a long time. I think I do a pretty good job, but you know what? I know I do, but I like to hear it every once in a while. And the improvements that we make in the kids' lives every single day has to count also. We're there, we're social workers, we're psychiatrists, and we're teachers. And those things have to be counted too. And what Rhode has done, it's like you're a robot. This is what you do. There's no measurement of how you deal with the kids, how you interact with the kids, how you help the kids every single day. Teach just basic values, and which in the inner city, for the most part, they get it from teachers. It's unfortunate but that is the truth.
Frank, you were at the hearing. If you could take a minute or so and just characterize for our viewers what the opposition to this bill was.
The opposition obviously was from the Rhode Island Department of Ed, because this is their plan. The other opposition was from the Rhode Island Shoreline Coalition, or whatever they're rebranding themselves as these days. And I'm not quite sure why, other than they're against anything that has to do with public employees having any rights at all for them. Rhodes wants this to go forward again because they have this artificial timeline, and that's what, and they want to stick to it rather than getting it right. I think the most compelling part of the testimony, most of the testimony, came from the teachers that participated that day. We had a number of teachers from different communities, and they were outstanding in their testimony. And the committee asked some wonderful questions, and they gave them a lot of leeway. They were allowed to pour their hearts out about the impact that this is having on them and as professionals, and the problems and pitfalls that they see within this evaluation system and the way it's being implemented within their classrooms, and the factors that they don't believe are being factored in to their evaluation in the current system, the way it's designed.
Representative, we could probably spend a lot of time talking about kneecap tests as a graduation requirement, and maybe that we'll do another show on that. But is there any relationship with that issue of students not graduating because of passing a standardized test and this teacher evaluation legislation?
Of course, everything relates to the kneecaps. Because if your school is like Barrington High School, Commissioner of Properties never even looked at any evaluations from Barrington High School. They don't care about it. She focuses on inner city schools, and she wants to dismantle them for whatever reason. I don't know why, but she is putting pressure on inner city schools to just dissolve and get rid of teachers. I don't understand her logic. And again, what her evaluation system is doing is all the young teachers, they have 2-3 years and they're getting out. And that's not what we want. That's not good for the city of Providence. It's not good for any inner city school system in this state. We are losing our best teachers because why am I going to do this? Why am I going to put up with this? Why am I going to be told that I'm a bad teacher every single day? Why do I have 50 people coming in and out, checking off? All right, you have the date on the board. Oh, you have the course standards there, and then they leave. Right? How is that evaluating a teacher? That's not evaluating a teacher. That's a checklist. And that's my opinion, and it's the opinion of a lot of our teachers. And if you look, what's happening is we're losing our best teachers. They're going, and we have like a revolving door of new teachers every single year. And that's not what we want. We want to keep these teachers here so they can do their job.
Okay. Well, I appreciate your passion on this issue, and I'm sure public school teachers around the state appreciate your leadership on this issue. Thank you both for your time today. I hope to maybe have another show a couple of months down the road where you can talk about how you got this bill passed through the Assembly this year.
I hope so.
Well, thank you very much, and thank you for joining us for this edition of Labor Vision.
Thank the other speakers. That this is so inspiring, and it's just where we need to be, and we're on the road, and I'm so glad to hear Juan say that we are not afraid, we are coming out of the shadows, and we're with you. So I'm here to talk about a topic that hasn't always been easy for labor, and quite frankly still is not in many quarters: immigration reform. And you might wonder why now? Why is labor so focused on the issue of immigration reform right now? Especially at a time when we're spending so much time nationally and putting our energies into preserving Medicare and Medicaid and the Social Security system, and we're making sure that the rich pay their fair share of taxes. But right now, labor's working really hard at opening up our arms for all workers, despite where they were born, and despite what papers they may be carrying. And the reason is because we understand, as a previous speaker said, this is not one person's problem. This is not the 11 million people who are living in the shadows problem. This is everybody's problem. We are all in this together. Labor understands that immigration reform that ensures a path to citizenship for all workers and is family-based, family-focused, that brings families together, that rather than tearing them apart, is the key to maintaining the middle class in this country, and is the only way the economy can grow for all Americans to enjoy. We understand that as long as millions upon millions of people are working in the shadows, in the underground economy, forced to work for meager wages, with no benefits, with no rights or protections, often in dangerous situations, the security of every American worker is at risk. So nationally, the AFL-CIO is working, with community and religious groups and immigration activists, and of all groups, the Chamber of Commerce, trying to craft an immigration policy that makes sense for all workers and their families. We are working to improve immigration laws so that the law protects all of us, not oppresses some of us. We understand we need to move forward to do the right thing. Fighting for comprehensive immigration reform is a must in this country if we are to remain the greatest nation in the world. And labor understands we cannot live in a world where there are two classes of workers, where one class can work hard and has a chance to get ahead, and the other class works in the shadows. And no matter how hard they work, they will be stuck in the cycle of poverty. Labor understands that we cannot have a country with two sets of rules for workers, where one group of workers can join a union, make decent wages, and has rights on the jobs, and the other group of workers stays in the shadows with no worker protection, no way to defend themselves against employers who take advantage of their status, no ability or very little ability to even complain if they are cheated out of their wages, as low as they may be. Labor understands that every worker needs to be treated with dignity. Every worker deserves to be able to get ahead. This cannot happen as long as we have millions upon millions of people living in the shadows. So we are working to craft a policy that will put immigrants on a clear and certain path to citizenship, not just temporary status. The roadmap should be certain, not contingent on ambiguous measures such as proof of regular employment that employers in the underground economy, by the way, will never produce for us, will never provide. We favor an expedited program to clear up the backlog of more than 4 million current green card holders. We will oppose any program which will perpetuate second-class status for more than 11 million immigrants residing in the U.S. by attempting to confer legalization without a clear roadmap to citizenship, as some have advocated. We believe that all workers, regardless of immigration status, are entitled to back pay, should not suffer discrimination, should have the right to join a union, and that there should be more protections for immigrant workers who expose violations of law so that they are not silenced by the fear of deportation. We believe that workers should have the ability to reunite with their families, not be separated from their families. So we have our work cut out for us, but I sit here before you today to say that without comprehensive, common sense immigration reform, our middle class will be further eroded. And every day, more and more Americans will get caught up in that cycle of poverty. And that is why now is the time for labor to be working on immigration reform.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us for this edition of Labor Vision. We appreciate your input and encourage your comments. Labor Vision can be seen 3 times each week, Tuesdays at 7 p.m., Thursdays at 8 p.m., and Saturdays at 5 p.m.